Hello everybody and welcome to another list video. The first list video of 2025. I'll be honest with all of you, I was actually gonna do a list video which was my resolutions for ARKHAM in 2025, but then I instead actually reorganized my entire office. I moved like everything around. So that I was like, Eric's coming over in 2 hours. I can record this list video, and then I got upstairs and I organized for an hour and a half. So we're doing this one instead, and Eric gave me a bunch of really cool ideas for some list videos here, and this is the first one that I've actually never thought about doing, which is just 5 investigators to choose if your first investigator dies. This is something that can happen. You can either choose to retire your investigator, or, like Eric, for reasons that you do not know, and when you're going into a scenario, your investigator may just be eliminated. So you can keep playing, and you have to start a new investigator. So I chose 5 here that I thought would be really good choices, just generally, to choose for this. And a big reason for my choice, there was 2. 1, doesn't need a lot to upgrade out of. Like, very functional at 0 or low experience counts, right? Mystics, for example, are very strong investigators, but the reason they are so strong is because of their upgrades. They have so much, they can cheat experience, you can get there quicker, but it's still a little bit harder to get through. And also, like, another one is rogues, even though it's a little bit of a, I'm a little bit like lying here because a rogue investigator did make this list. Rogues are also generally pretty bad at level 0. But they upgrade really well, right? So that's something that immediately made them kind of like not work for me, right? Another thing was that if their ability was very good, and just like it was something that you were able to take advantage of to essentially make up for the fact that you suck now, right? Yeah, so you could also, in theory, just like choose a new investigator and carry over the experience from the investigator that died to your investigator if you want it to be a little bit softer. But if you're playing by the true rules, you don't get to do that. So you just get to like enjoy the show. So our first one here is Ashan Pete, the Drifter. So this guy has an ability where he starts with Duke the dog in play. Duke is his dog. And he can also discard a card from his hand to ready an asset he controls. What Duke does is you can either exhaust him to move and investigate at 4 book, or fight for +1 damage at 4 fist. So he's just very low to the floor, which means that you can kind of just fill your role as a flex. Like, again, when you die also, like, you might die as the Clover, you might die as the Fighter, you might die as the Flex. These are kind of like suggestions for all of those roles that can go there. With Ashan Pete, he's generally a Flex because of the ability printed on Duke the Dog, right? But what it also does is you can kind of focus more because the Survivor card pool is pretty flexy, but you can also kind of like build to focus on those things with things like Fire Axe, which are actually pretty relevant weapons, or Mariner's Compass, which is not, these aren't really great with Ashan Pete, but again, like Duke allows you to do those things with also skills committed. Also, he's a Survivor, and their upgrading is, they cap out, like they get their stuff done to like 9 XP. You get like Brute Forces, Sharp Visions, and you kind of just like fill the hole that you left by helping your teammates pass their tests.
This entire time I've had the urge to just dunk my finger
in my water.
Into your water.
Right, I'll move it. I only put it there because I wanted my drink to be there, so I'm glad
just the whole time you were talking, I was like, I gotta not do this, no matter how funny it would be for the camera.
I'm glad that you resisted the call of the void.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I really like your take on Ashan Pete. I think that's also really smart. I think the idea too of choosing a character who automatically gets, I believe, because Duke is treated as an ally, right?
Yes, but it doesn't take your ally slot, but it is like an ally. It functions very similarly.
Being able to just always regularly start with an ally, especially when you're behind on that XP curve, I think is also just great as well.
Yes.
Like that just feels like a good place to start if you're on the back foot.
Yeah, and notably too, a lot of these investigators, like when you die halfway through, you're just not going to be as good, right? Duke generally runs out of, Ashan Pete, we call him Duke because Duke's his dog, and Duke is the exciting part of the card because it's a dog, right?
Yeah.
But Ashan Pete generally runs out of steam come scenario 8. He's like still functional, but like he doesn't have the same highs that other people have. However, he's very good in like scenario 1, right? So while you're not going to be like scenario 1 good, you are still just like a flat value for this, so he's very nice for that kind of thing.
So in a way, the fact that he doesn't get a higher power spike later on
Yes.
makes him not a bad choice for this, because then you can be like, okay, at least I can contribute.
Exactly. And that's kind of like what it really all comes down to. Like, it's harder in 2-player because just you are like with 2 players, it's harder because both sides need to be working very efficiently to get it done.
Yeah.
The more players you add, generally the less efficiency you need, because other players are going to fill that efficiency for you, right? Like, even though like that's kind of an oxymoron statement, because if everyone's running with slightly less efficiency, are we really filling that efficiency? But the answer is yes, because there's just generally more people who can solve problems that show up.
Exponential, not linear.
Yeah, exactly. And like what Ashan Pete can do, like in 2-player, it's gonna be a little bit harder, but like in 3 players, he's a very good replacement flex. Yeah.
For some reason, the way you phrase this just gave me the next idea for my next list suggestion, which is which ARKHAM character would make the best commander in MTG?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the kind of cool thing. Like, this is a whole other discussion topic.
Yeah.
But it's something really cool that Commander has kind of done for board games and just general card games and as well, which is just that there's the idea that there is a character you are playing, right? And I think that's a very cool thing to just kind of have be done more, because it allows for a lot of expression, and it's a big reason why Arkham Horror is such a fun game to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Harvey Walters.
Interesting.
So he has 4. Okay, so actually the real reason why this guy's so good is he has 5 book.
Yeah.
His ability is when an investigator at your location draws a card, they draw 1 extra card, and his card pool is Seeker, 0 to 5. The reason why he is good, if your Seeker dies, this guy has 5 book, which means that all you really need to be functioning in the final scenario is a magnifying glass. Basically just +1 book, so you're at 6, and then it's a very comfortable number. Clue getters are generally the easiest role to replace, because their ability is the easiest thing to do. It does dictate the pace of the game, so you have to be like a bad Clover. So a bad Clover.
I've been this Clover.
Yeah. I mean, like, so if you think about it, like, a bad fighter is going to lose you the game because you lose to enemies, right? A bad Clover is going to make you lose to the mythos phase and the agenda advancing.
Well, and even the monsters too, because
Yes.
the more turns you're taking, the more
exactly.
monsters you're fighting.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So then, like, your fighter, if they're only okay, are going to start faltering. And then, of course, that Clover, the player blames the fighter, not themselves, because Seekers are never the problem. They're never the problem. So it's one of those things that they're easiest role to replace, because their job is, if you are doing it well, is the least stressful job, because everyone else is kind of bending over backwards to make sure you can do your job, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are, like, say for example, we are playing, you draw an enemy, right? You're the Clover, I'm the fighter. Even if I draw an enemy, you'll notice that the first thing I do is try to solve your problem, as opposed to you having to solve your own problem. Because if you're able to get clues, we'll win the game quicker.
That's interesting. Sorry, I'm now also thinking of that Marvel Champions game we played recently, and how I think some of that logic for you is still coming through on the thwart versus fight.
Yes.
And that's very interesting.
Well, a big thing too is also just that, I mean, that's a whole other, I would love to do videos discussing Marvel Champions too when we grind out more of it.
Yeah.
But like, that game, I think, rewards flexing more than ARKHAM does, right? I think ARKHAM you're very much focused, rewarded rather, for fixating, like hyper specializing your goal. And that's the reason why you make so much room for the Cloovers, right?
Yeah, of course.
So, like, I think that Harvey Walters would be my recommendation. Daisy Walker is also a good one. She also has 5 book. If you have 5 in your stat and you need a replacement, like, it's just like a 5 in the stat makes it so much easier for you to take on that role.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, weird question then. Are there any 5s you wouldn't take? Are there any people who have a 5 in a stat that you wouldn't take?
Just because they're mystics.
Yeah.
They're mystics, and also foot, unless you are able to quickly take advantage of that. Just because foot is in the rogue class, and again, they get better when they upgrade more. Or it's Rita Young, who actually honestly almost made this list because she's a survivor, so she doesn't need a lot to get going. But I couldn't in good faith because she's also not generally good.
Yeah.
I think every investigator on this list, aside from Ashan Pete, because once again he doesn't scale that well, are I think quite strong investigators. And you are going to want a strong investigator for your replacement. You're not going to want to, like, for example, die as Kelvin Wright and then go into Lola Hayes. Like, you're going to want to be able to choose an investigator that can finish the campaign because your first one died.
That's fascinating. Okay, I like it.
All right, next one here. This one's a little bit of a personal one, but I was trying to like think of a good fighter. Fighters were hard to find a replacement. But I ultimately ended up choosing Sylus Marsh over Rita Young just because I think his power level is higher. So Sylus Marsh's ability is once per round, I believe, you can return a skill card you committed to a test after you reveal the token. So that means you have some like security on your skill cards to trigger when you want to, or with some skill cards, for example, Unrelenting and Sylus Marsh, it has an effect when it's committed, so you can do that effect and then return it to your hand. It's basically like playing an event for free and then getting that event back into your hand.
It's almost like Sylus Marsh just has his own built-in myriad then for events.
Kind of, in a way. For skill cards, yeah, in a way.
Sorry, for skill cards, yeah.
So the other thing too is all these investigators you should probably take in the thick of it with to get some bonus experience to just make you hit a little bit quicker. With Sylus Marsh, you take 2 copies of Unrelenting because that is kind of like a signature card for Sylus Marsh. It makes him really good. The reason why I did choose Sylus Marsh is kind of like Ashan Pete. He's less ability to flex, but because he's a survivor, you can get things done really quickly. So, for example, a Sylus Marsh is actually pretty competitive with 2 copies of Unrelenting and 2 copies of Brute Force, which is a skill in the Survivor class. It costs 1 experience. You commit it to a test, a basic fight. It gives you 3 icons. If you succeed by 2, you deal 3 damage. So that's a very powerful card. And then you can use Resourceful and a level 0 Survivor card to return that card to your hand. So like you kind of have some power built into it. He also uses Fire Axe very well because he has 4 Fist as opposed to Ashan Pete's 2 Fist. And another thing too that Sylus Marsh is really good at is he has 4 foot as well. So if you are overwhelmed because your efficiency at killing enemies is not super high, you can use your skills to still evade and like be able to get value out of that as well.
You've actually kind of sold me. I kind of want to play him now as my next investigator.
He's my favorite investigator, Sylus Marsh. He is like, every year since he's come out, this guy has been my #1 investigator. He's very tricky to play, but he's incredibly powerful in the right hands.
Yeah, wow, he sounds like a lot of fun.
He also has 2 signatures that actually are weapons and evade tools. He has a harpoon that actually will deal +1 damage and also commits it works it with his kit. And he has a net that gives him +1 foot and also has a benefit as well. So like he has that versatility. Notably though, his signature weakness can hit at the wrong time if you are using Fire Axe. You just have to be aware of that. But the big thing about Sylus Marsh as well is that he uses skill cards. So you can actually just put in skill cards and just commit them, and you don't need to worry about like finding the perfect card. You can just like take advantage of the cards that you have to make them work.
Yeah. That's really impressive.
Yeah, so I think he's a really nice choice for a backup investigator. Yeah. All right, number 4, we got our rogue in Trish Scarboro. She is her ability is very powerful, and that's one of the 2 reasons why she made it over. Why she's making over that rogue hump. And her ability is after you discover a clue, if there's an enemy at your location, you may either discover an additional clue or evade an enemy at your location. If it's tabooed, it's only non-elite enemies, so you can't use it against bosses.
Reasonable, I will say.
It was a very nice taboo for that. So that ability is very powerful because like Harvey Walters, it's actually very easy to trigger. And it's also just like value that is very easy to get. Her card pool is also very strong because she has level 0 Seeker cards. It's another big bonus that Harvey Walters had, where because you have level 0 Seeker cards, which I think is easily the strongest level 0 card pool in the game, it's very powerful, and there's a lot of cool things you can do in there, and even cards that you wouldn't generally put in a normal Trish Scarboro deck at level 0, like for scenario 1, you'll find a reason to put them into your deck in scenario 4, right, as an example, or scenario 5, whenever your character dies or retires.
She's also got good book.
She's got very good book. She has good foot, which you can utilize in your card pool. If you buy an In the Thick of It, for example, you take an In the Thick of It, take 2 physical trauma, because then you just start at 6/6, very survivable. Grab 2 copies of lockpicks that are level 1. You're going to be investigating at 8 once a turn. You're going to grab a lucky cigarette case, so you're drawing some cards to get value, and then you're going to load your deck with cards that discover clues, dodge attacks of opportunity, and what was I going to say? I just lost the thought. And basically just like get more clues or like give you card advantage or draw cards. I do honestly think this is kind of like what this list video is coming to. It maybe not be for all of these, but I do think that a Trish Scarboro at level 0 could beat a Scenario 8. I think she's that powerful, just because of her ability and her card pool. I think she's just that good at the game.
I think you, Travis, and Bryn should do a campaign where you all at level 4 have to switch.
That actually would be a fun idea.
Yeah,
that
and
would
then
be a
just
fun idea.
you don't get to carry over your experience. You only play to that 4th, and you have to start with new characters.
If I can't, that does sound. I do like that idea.
Because I think this list video is making me really want to see see these
the switch happen.
Yeah.
I think also what you maybe want to do is I want to try to do get a group to do a Scenario 8 at level 0 decks.
Yeah.
Just kind of like test that out. Not that it ever happens, but this Trish, I even convinced myself in this video, I do think that Trish could kill a Scenario 8 just because her ability is so good. It's a very good ability.
That's wild.
And it's funny because, so a little side note, I remember when Trish was spoiled, a lot of people were like, her ability doesn't seem that good. It just seems like very boring. And we're actually getting a very similar thing from Lucius Galloway, so I'm curious if he is also going to impress more than his ability reads. All right. Last one here. This one was tough. I was trying to, once again, find another fighter, but I do think that this fighter is probably the best of the fighters to choose, and that is Daniela Reyes. She has 5 Fist. That's the #1 selling point. The other fighters that have 5 Fist are Nat Cho, who you could do as well, because he has 5 Fist and he has like built-in damage on his card. However, he doesn't really upgrade that well. Like, he doesn't really upgrade, like, in a 4/4, you're going to have to, like, find that. And then you also got to, like, find his boxing gloves, so he's a little bit fragile. I think Mark Harrigan's a good choice. And then there's Hank Sampson as another relevant 5 Fist. And Tony Morgan as well, but again, he's a rogue. So he kind of gets eliminated from that. Again, these are all good choices, but I think Daniela Reyes is the best choice. And the main reason for that is that she is actually a survivor. Because she's like Edge of the Earth Investigator. So they have a strange deck building that I don't think you've actually played yet.
I don't think I have.
Where they start as a class and they get all the... Oh, actually, I'm playing in Bob's one. So you get all of your main class. So she gets all level 0 Guardian cards. She can have 5 level 0 Survivor cards, but then she upgrades into 1 to 5 Survivor. So she basically upgrade into your splash color from the start.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So she is, even though she's a Guardian on the tin, she's actually a Survivor, when you look at the back of her card. And so for that reason, again, Brute Force. It's just a very efficient card that it doesn't hurt to, like, it's just like so good, especially when you need to like just come in an emergency position. Additionally, a lot of her ability, so her ability is when you are attacked by an enemy, as long as it was not an attack of opportunity, you can either deal 1 damage to that enemy or exhaust it, or evade it, right? So, what that allows you to do is...
Shouldn't be so shocked this card's existed this whole time, but I've never used it.
but that's kind of the joy of ARKHAM. There's so many investigators, right? Like, you can just, like, go over one and then suddenly be like, wait a minute, this one's banging. But what that does is... the nice thing about that ability as well is that there's actually so much support for it in the Guardian class. So there's going to be so much that you're going to have in there that you're going to be able to take advantage of. Which is just really nice, again, when you have very little experience coming into this. If you're going to take Daniela, you're going to want to grab the Brute Forces with your In the Thick of It XP as well. Notably, what was I going to say? I just lost it. Oh yeah, notably, her weapon access is a little bit worse because she upgrades into Survivor. But again, you can grab like Fire Axes if you want to just do it. Because even with a Fire Axe, if you're attacking at 5 with a card committed and you have 0 resources, you're going to be dealing that extra damage. And that's kind of like the next extension of this list where it's a little bit more complicated, which is what cards are good when you have to replace your Investigator. And for those, you have to look for things that are like low to the ground and don't require a lot of setup. Setup is going to kill you if you have to... It's going to kill you again if you have to replace your Investigator. Yeah.
I actually most want to play her, and I'm most excited by her because, and we can laugh at this all we like, as much as I don't like the 2 foot, the fact that she's got 5 Fist and 4 Brain makes me very excited because I'm so used to these days playing Investigators that have low brain and get killed by the Mythos deck. The idea of having a fighter who is just kind of passively decent.
Yes.
or is at least not down 2 at the start of every. And
No, I think that's a very good observation because Daniela literally has one of the most goated stat lines in the game. It's insanely powerful. The nice thing about the 2 foot is that you actually don't feel it as much because you are inherently building to soak. So you don't really have to worry as much about failing those things because it's also dealing you damage, which a lot of your soak is going to already have.
Well, and she's got that built-in evade too.
Yep.
So that blows my mind that she's got that 2 foot as opposed to just 1.
Yeah, and it's like nice too because it's like anytime. So like it's one of those things that it seems counterintuitive when you might be just starting out, but if you have a 1 in a stat, it's actually the best thing you could have. Because that means your other stats are going to be better to make. So just because like you're not like if she was like 3-2, 5-2, she would still be very good. But that book, you're not using that book at 1 or 2, right? So because it being 1 is just like a treat on top of a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Eric, thank you for the list video because it actually was really interesting for me as well to kind of go through and make these decisions. If there's any ones you think you would want to add to this list, you can let me know down in the video description. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. Happy 2025. It's crazy. This is to get a little bit behind the curtain, a little bit like deep with it. Every January 1st, I'm always like, there's another 365 ARKHAM videos I need to make. But now, there's only 364, so we did it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, GG's.